Welcome to the No BS Short-Term Rental Podcast, an unfiltered look into the global vacation and short-term rental industry.
I'm Mateo Bradford.
And I'm John Stokinger.
And this is our podcast. We bring the right people to the table at the right time, giving you an inside view and take on the short-term rental industry like no other podcast can.
Good morning, Mateo.
Is my makeup okay, John?
Yeah, it looks good this morning. You spent a little extra time in the mirror, I see. That's good. Thank you.
No, I just shaved. That's it.
Oh, all right. Well, yeah. I still appreciate that. Well, good morning. Episode 25. Another week. We're excited to be here bright and early on you'll be listening to this on a Thursday morning. We are joined today by Sarah Franzen, Director of Revenue Management and Analytics. Oh my goodness. Please.
Natural retreats.
Jeez. And for those that are listening, I'm having the worst flu brain. I had the terrible flu over the weekend, and I'm just scatterbrained all over the place. So Sarah, how are you?
Apparently I'm doing better than you.
Oh my gosh. I'm out of it.
This has been amazing. This has been amazing so far. I love this so far. So welcome to our podcast. We are excited to have you on here. Can't wait to dig in and talk with you this week because you're a pioneer of sorts, and we're going to dig into that. So
I didn't wear my pioneer outfit, but you know,
I'm a little disappointed. Now
if I'd known,
now I'm a little disappointed.
But it had the bonnet, the Little House on the Prairie bonnet.
Nice. Do you have one of those? That would be amazing.
Good show. No, but I do own all of the Little House on the Prairie books.
Do you?
Books. Love them. Yeah. I mean, that's like home too. So it's.
Well, so my wife just got through reading every Little House on the Prairie book to my 9-year-old.
So good. Yep, so, I read them out loud to my daughter when she was little.
Yeah, too. So he just finished reading them. I mean, I think they spent 2 years reading every Little House on the Prairie book.
They're so good.
Yeah. So and he loves it. So cool. I'm there with you. You know.
Mateo's
no. The funny part, I didn't even know it was a book. I just remember the TV show growing up. I didn't know it was a series of books.
Based on the book.
Michael Landon and
No, it's based on the book.
Hey Ma, hey Pa.
Well, that's Walt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then falling down the hill.
Carrie going down the hill. Yeah.
And they all lived, and the kids slept upstairs. I remember that.
Good show.
Yeah, the good show, better books. We kind of daydream of going back into those times as a family and be how much simpler it would be, and how much more you can get out of life. I think that a lot of technology and and politics have complicated things over time. So it's kind of fun to think about that kind of stuff.
Well, and Shyamalan made a movie about that. Actually, you have to check it out. It's actually super interesting.
Which one?
Was it the Village? Which one was it? Now I gotta look. I'm gonna look up the name. I'm gonna find it too. It was it's one of the last ones he did before he took a break. Remember, they were hiding from the world, and they were in a park in Pennsylvania, but they had all decided to move into the middle of this park where planes couldn't fly over, and they would be completely isolated from the world. So they were thinking they were living in the 1850s, but they were just this isolated community in the middle of these woods. And they created this mythology of these monsters to keep the kids and everyone from leaving. And, it's that ideology that, life was so simple back then, but they had their own set of problems.
I mean, you could get eaten by a bear. I mean,
yeah, true.
Facts.
Yeah.
And nobody would know. Well, very few people would know.
Yeah, true. I mean, just your small community would know that you were eaten by a bear.
Or they'd know you're gone.
Yeah.
But, that's really cheerful. Sorry.
So we do it around here. Yeah. That's how we do it around here.
I feel this isn't where it was supposed to go.
That's all right. It doesn't really matter. And that's the great thing about the No Bullshit podcast.
Cool.
Speaking of where it should go, though, tell us how tell us your journey into the space. Tell us how did you get started? Why do you love you seem like a person that absolutely loves revenue management, and numbers and crunching numbers and analytics. Talk to us about that and kind of how you got started and how you've gotten to where you are today.
I definitely never thought that I would be doing this. So, all the way back to college, my goal was to own a music school. That was what I wanted to do. So I was a music major and a business major. So my 2 degrees were in undergrad were vocal performance and business analytics.
Okay.
So the goal was always to have my own music school, which I did. And in the process of that, I finished my MBA in Georgia. My ex was in the military, so we were all over the place. So worked on the MBA at the University of Georgia. And then, prior to that, I'd gone to do my Master's of Music in San Jose. So all with the idea that I was going to be a music school owner. It's always what I wanted to do. Accomplished that, and then the Army, as the Army moves you around, and it was just, I ended up in Virginia, which is where I am now, and just was too tough to continue to run a music school from Virginia when it was in Georgia. So got away from that, became a music teacher in a middle school. As crazy as that sounds, I really liked it, and that was cool. And then there were some other issues that went on with like our I guess your home state with the military and working full time, and so left that. And when my daughter's father and I split, we decided that we were going to co-parent and we were going to raise her in one place, and we weren't going to do the Army thing. So he committed to stay in Virginia, I committed to stay in Virginia, and so that was great. And I was like, well, now what do I do? Because I'm not teaching. I had taken some time off from teaching, and that got me into hotels. So it was one of these things where I applied for a hotel sales job, and I was like, what is hotel sales? I had no idea what hotel sales was. And I went into the interview completely oblivious to what hotel sales was. But I'd kind of had my own business before, so I had, been able to talk that up a little bit. And I landed this job as a director of sales for a hotel.
Wow.
Not really knowing that was a thing. Like I just didn't know. So definitely over the course of the next year, 2 years, figuring out that, okay, hotel sales, 1, exists, and 2, figuring out what it was, and 3, realizing that I really don't like being a salesperson. I am an introvert by nature, and being an outside salesperson was exhausting. But I learned of this thing called revenue management when I was in hotel sales. And I was like, I want to do that. That's cool. We had this revenue manager. We'd meet once a week. We'd talk about, demand. We talk about all sorts of stuff that I was like, that's really cool to me. So it was my goal then, very early on, to figure out how to break into that. I went from that director of sales position to another director of sales position, still here in Virginia, and was given the opportunity to not only be director of sales, but to also be a revenue manager, which, if you have any, knowledge of sales and revenue management and how they should work, completely bad idea, horrible idea. I think I was successful at it, but there were certainly many opportunities where, somebody who wanted to mess with things could mess with things and just be unethical or be, very lopsided.
It's a little, kind of against the grain the way it should be.
Yeah. And it was kind of like, hey, we don't want to like hire a revenue manager, but, we know that it's kind of important. So that was kind of but I loved it. And so that was it. I was a hotel revenue manager. And then from there went into hotel revenue management with Marriott product. And then, that was just always what I wanted to do. And then I knew somebody who worked for Natural Retreats, and they were hiring a revenue manager. And I was like, that's cool. I would love to, kind of grow my personal development. I'd like to continue to grow. So I applied and got the job at Natural Retreats. And then that was in 2015. And I had a whole set of ideas of what I thought that was going to be, all of which were wrong. I had no idea the differences in practice, really primarily, between hotel revenue management and vacation rental revenue management. And so it's been since then, it's been this, I don't want to say an uphill battle, but in a lot of ways it has been, but it's been an uphill discovery maybe of really what revenue management is in this space, and really has challenged me to look internally to say, okay, I know what revenue management is in a hotel space, but now I have to apply principles more to the short-term rental space, because you don't have a lot of the tools and the resources that you do in a hotel. It's very much automated in hotel world. So you really have to think through things from a conceptual perspective here. So over the last 6.5 years, I've been really just thinking and growing and trying to figure things out. But that is a really long-winded answer, and I'm really sorry that I just took, I don't know how much time.
Oh my goodness, I can't believe that.
I kind of feel like I couldn't explain it.
No, that's.
I think it was spot on. Yeah, like look, and because one of my first questions, and you actually answered it before I could even get to it, was going to be like the challenge of transitioning from hotel to short-term rental management. And I came from rented, so when we transitioned to revenue management, we were doing something completely different before, and I was like, whoa, revenue management. Like I always had this idea of what it was, and I had friends that worked in hotels, and they were like, oh, it's just pretty straightforward. You just put this in place and it runs. And then when I was in rented and working with the team there, and getting in with Cliff, and I was like, I was like the universe. It was like, this is vastly complex, and there's so many different things that go into it, and so many factors you have to consider and account for and run. It was intriguing. It was a great learning experience, but very, very different. And
it's so much more fun. It's more fun. I will say it is more fun in this space, because you have to think, you have to use your brain, you have to, think conceptually a lot. And so it really is a completely different challenge, which I love. But it is kind of uncharted territory, or it is not so much anymore. There are a lot of tools and things that are coming into play in this space, which is really neat to see, but it is still fairly new. So,
well, I think the biggest obvious difference is that obviously the homeowner component, is which you're not going to have that on the hotel side, but then there's so many more different variables and complexities that you probably didn't even think about when you first got into it. And I bet that even today there are new things that are popping up with new technology, with new integrations that you're like, oh, this is going to be easier, or oh shoot, this is actually harder now because now we're looking at this variable which we never had to look at before, which would have to be exciting for a person in your position. With that said, so your Natural Retreats now for 6.5 years, is that correct? Okay. How much has Natural Retreats grown in the 6.5 years that you've been there? We know that there's been some major acquisitions. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure that your portfolio that you're managing is a little different than it was 6.5 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even be able to tell you even by number, like how many units it's grown. But we've grown primarily through acquisition. Obviously, we have a focus on organic growth too within our current markets, and that's a significant focus for us. It's always easier to grow where you already are.
Yeah.
So that said, I mean, when I came on, I think we had maybe 5 locations, I would say, 5, maybe 6, and we currently have 16. So we've, expanded that significantly, expanded the team. I mean, I think what's more significant even than, unit count is just the kind of the business mindset of the company, which has grown from just, acquiring a greater number of properties to really making and doing that in a way that's smart, intelligent, that works for us, for our business strategy, for what we're trying to accomplish, not just growing to grow. But then also, from my perspective, from a revenue management perspective, understanding that there's a lot of information that we are taking in from our own, our own system that we record, and then all this other new market data that's out there, where we're really able to start making decisions from a very data-driven kind of place, which is something that I would say has been a significant, huge growth for our company over the years. So more so than like the number of units, but really just the attitude and the way that we approach things has grown just exponentially. So I really appreciate that, because and I feel like it's been a really significant way for my department to contribute to the business as a whole. And, and I appreciate that. I want to be able to contribute, obviously, not just,
Right.
We're not just setting rates. We're not just creating discounts. We're not just doing, this is all something done within the larger context of our goals and our, and what we're trying to achieve as a company as a whole. So that, I think, is significant for my company. And one of the reasons why, I really appreciate it and love it here.
It's great points, and it's something that Matteo and I have had conversations in the past with brand, and the Natural Retreats brand is a strong brand, and it's I like seeing where the brand Natural Retreats has grown in these past few years, and I think we might even been talking with Simon a few weeks ago about brand and how significant that is going to be for these companies that are growing and scaling, and to recognize, as a destination or as a property management company, you're not just going to, hey, I'm staying at a Natural Retreats, and the importance of that for our industry. And there are certain brands that do it well, and there are some that don't. I from everything that I see, obviously Natural Retreats is doing it well.
Well, that's good to hear. But it's hard, building a brand in any sort of hospitality space is hard. Hilton and Marriott, they've obviously gotten a foothold. They've been doing this for a long time. But even, when it comes to, search or anything like that, do people really know Natural Retreats? People in our industry do. And I think there are different ways to look at branding. Branding is really significant for the company itself, to understand who you are and what you're trying to do, and to lay the foundation for your business goals. I think a brand is significant because it does inform how you move forward. I think that there's more to branding than just, like people will say, oh, Airbnb is like, they've built this brand. Everybody will talk about, oh, I stayed in an Airbnb, and that is significant for, for them in terms of like their reach. But, for us anyway, I seem to think that building a brand is more than just do people know who you are? It's, do you know who you are? Because if you don't know who you are, you're not going to be able to move forward with that to tell other people who you are. So I think that is a challenge in our industry, because, we have a lot of, smaller companies out there, single location places that are very successful and have built a brand of their own. And it's not to take away, just because they're, in a single destination, or they have fewer than, 1,000 properties or whatever, it doesn't mean that they haven't built a brand. They probably have built a very successful brand. And just because, Sarah Franzen sitting in Charlottesville, Virginia, has never heard of this brand in, Topeka, Kansas, doesn't mean they haven't built a brand. It means that, I haven't heard of them, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. So I don't know.
Well, I think the conversation should be also like, look, like, who are you trying to be, right? We're talking about a brand and a company. Like, not everybody's trying to be Vicasa. Not everybody's trying to be these large, V-Trips and these large scale players in the space. Like, some people are okay with,
Right.
their business being a certain size and not going outside of that. And I think that gets eclipsed a lot because everyone's always talking about the growers and the scalers and who's going to be the biggest, baddest guy in the room or company in the room. And that's not everybody's goal. And we don't hear people talk about that a lot. But I know plenty of property managers that are kind of happy in their space.
Yeah.
That they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to, they're sensitive to people coming into and changing, the dynamic of how their business will run, but they're not trying to be the biggest company, in their region, area, or in the country. And that's
right.
Perfectly okay with them. And we don't really hear those stories. So yeah, something you got to bring up, John, for like a future episode, get some of those smaller guys in there, have that conversation. Cause I feel like that, we don't even focus on that. Like, no one's talking about that, especially around the branding conversation. Because
that's a great
industry's had them for a while. Unique little bed and breakfasts that have done their things forever, and got repetitive guests and do well and they're successful.
So, yeah, I mean, when at the end of the day, I think it's a great idea. We definitely need to have that on a future podcast. At the end of the day, if someone's got 50 units and they're able to run it successfully, like a 4-person staff, and hire with some outside hired housekeeping team, and they're paying the bills and they're happy life at home and they have plenty of free time. Perfect. Like, their work-life balance is great. I think these are all great personal decisions people have.
Yeah. Do you want to have a portfolio with 50 that's profitable or a portfolio with 5,000 that's not? I mean,
yeah.
So there are a lot of things that go into that. And I do think that has been one of the narratives that we've been hearing a lot, is just this growth through acquisition and the big dogs coming to swallow up the little. And I think you're right. It's about your goals. It's about what the business goal is. And some people don't care.
Right.
So about the things that some of the bigger ones do. I shouldn't say don't care. That's not fair.
No.
So Sarah, sorry, I'll let.
No, you go ahead, John. Got it.
So I kind of want to just quickly pivot here for a moment. Earlier, but before we started hit recording, I had like a little thing I wanted to kind of throw at you that you might be surprised by. So this is a true or false question for you. True or false, I went to college for music education.
Well, because you're asking me, I feel like it's probably true, but I didn't know that if it is.
I did. So I used to play. I played French horn. I went to Plymouth State University in New Hampshire for music education. I was in the Conn Artist Horn Quartet, CONN.
Yep.
I was in all states. I was in all New England district. That was my elementary all the way through 1 year college. And unfortunately, in Plymouth State, you could go. I also was a snowboarder and skier, and I could go ride Loon Mountain for $5 with my student ID. So I majored in snowboarding and marijuana. The music education, I only lasted a year, but I had high, aspirations. I wanted to teach music. I actually spent in high school, I spent a whole semester actually going into the elementary schools and helping teach the kids in school and conduct
very cool
band. So
I didn't know this. Wow.
Yeah. I can conduct.
That is super cool.
But yeah, so that's our little connection. I wish I still had chops. I don't even have a French horn anymore. But I used to play all brass. I used to sing in chorus. Yeah, I was a super band geek.
Very cool. It's funny. I've met a couple other folks who have a significant music background who are also in this space. So, it's funny because obviously I didn't know this. And at the same time, it's not surprising because I've found that there is a significant contingent of people in our space that have an arts background, which I think is interesting to say the least. But very cool. And French horn is one of my, I mean, if I'm going to listen to a brass instrument, it's going to be French horn. Like I love the French horn. It's beautiful. It's really tough to play very well. And so when it's not played well, it can definitely not be beautiful. But I'm sure you were a beautiful player. But yeah, it's definitely an amazing instrument. So very cool.
Thank you. That was my little
nice
connection there. There's a lot of it I miss. I miss orchestra. Like we were in a every once a week we'd go we had an orchestra that was like about a half-hour drive, and we'd get everyone together. Sorry, I digress. But that was
I did not know that. So it was my son's major. So he actually just changed his major to film, but he was playing trombone, and he's still in the trombone choir at his school, but he's actually changed his major to film. But that was
another very cool mellow instrument.
Yeah.
Nice.
It was kind of the legacy instrument in our family. So my father is a jazz pianist, but his growing up, he started with the piano, but all through school he played the trombone, all through college. So, and continues to teach music to this day. It's crazy.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, Sarah, tell me about winning the inaugural Revenue Manager of the Year at DARM. I mean, it was.
So first of all, congratulations. We gotta get that.
Thank you.
That's a huge first. That's a huge first for you.
Yeah, it was definitely a surprise. Complete surprise, complete honor. I still am kind of like, are you sure like that you want me to be that person? Because you don't always see me banging my head against my computer every day. But it was really cool. It was really nice for Amy and Expedia Group to honor the awardees at DARM. It's nice to be recognized, regardless of what you're doing. I mean, they had the Pioneer Award, and then they had the Innovation awards that went out, and it's just really cool to be acknowledged for what you're doing. And like I said, it was a complete surprise. The kind of the story behind that was that, so they awarded the Pioneer Award the first day, and the person, I cannot remember his name, and I feel terrible about that, but the person who came up and accepted the award was like, Amy told me that this was coming, so I put together a few words to say, and it was like it was very touching. We're like, oh, that's great. And so the second day was the Revenue Manager of the Year award. And I actually had an appointment in the first half of that session where they were awarding that. And Amy had asked me, are you going to be at this session? I said, well, I've got this meeting. And she's like, well, can you make sure that you're there at this certain time? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I walked in the middle, the thing is going on. And I'm like, okay. So I sat down at her table. I was like, did you need me? And she's like, yeah, just hang on. And then it happened, and she announced me, and I was like, well, you didn't tell me anything. Like, I didn't, it was, I thought that, anyone who would get an award would be, told about it ahead of time. And it was just a complete shock. But it was so very, very kind and just really meaningful to be recognized among a bunch of peers who could have very, very easily, won it too. It's the good news is that there are so many people going forward that can win this thing. Like, there are so many of us that are just going to work every day and trying to figure stuff out, and sometimes we fail, and sometimes there's a win and you go, well, was that really me? Or so there's a lot of I think second guessing of oneself in this discipline, but a lot of really cool people that I've gotten to know in this industry who are doing kind of what I do every day. And it's just really cool to have that acknowledged and recognized. So that was really, really neat. Completely surprised and really honored by it.
Well, we were excited to see you win. We were at DARM. It was a great conference and definitely well deserved.
Yeah.
Well deserved.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much.
In that line, so there's two questions I have. Just shining the spotlight on revenue management and during your time, and even in my own time, it's in knowing the importance that the industry is placing on it now. That hasn't always been the case, right? And to be very clear, not everybody's great at revenue management, right? Like even they may work hard, they may do the thing, and they may do okay, but not everybody's really great at revenue management. And that's why I think we're seeing, the importance of it pushed to the forefront, and, more tools being pushed towards, companies being able to either empower their revenue managers or empower themselves to be able to do it themselves. I guess my first question to you is, and knowing you, it may be a little hard for you to answer the question, but I would like to know, what do you think makes you different in this space? What makes you different as a revenue manager than the others in this space? What makes you good at what you do from your perspective?
I think that the people who, I don't even want to say do the best, because I fail a lot. Maybe that's one thing, is I'm willing to fail. Yeah. And I put that out there. I'll tell people, listen, I don't know this, this could be completely wrong. And if it's wrong, we'll learn from it and we'll pivot and we'll, move forward. But that is one thing that ever since I was small, I was okay with messing up and failing. Now, do I beat myself up about it? Yeah, I do. But so I think that's significant. But I will say that I think that almost everyone I know in this space who's doing the same thing is pretty much of the same mindset. And so, I do think that it's important to think about your company as you're managing. So, and your company becomes very granular when you're actually doing the day-to-day stuff. So your company is, not just us, but it's our owners, it's our guests. So really understanding as a company what we're trying to accomplish, as owners understanding what they're trying to accomplish, as guests giving them, a fair product, whether it's price or quality, whatever it is, offering them a fair, if not exceptional, hopefully, experience through product and price. And I think that, understanding that that's not going to look the same for Natural Retreats or Vacasa, or like you're saying, V-Trips, or, an independent, a smaller independent business in a single location, that's going to look different. How we're approaching things is going to be different. And that includes revenue management. So, I think early on in this space, there was a lot of talk about, how do you do this? These tips and tricks. And it was always really worrisome, I think, for me in a lot of ways to see that, because I know that one thing isn't going to work for everybody. So right. When you see and hear people get up and talk about, oh, well, you should do this, or you should do that, or you should, when occupancy gets to a certain that's not going to be the case for everybody, because
it's not a one size fits all kind of thing.
It's not. Yeah. So if you can go into it thinking that and knowing that and understand, being very confident in your company and what you're trying to accomplish, and also be willing to just completely fall flat on your face.
Right.
And to own it. I think that's the other thing is, it's one thing to fall flat on your face and to own it. Another thing to fall flat on your face and then try to push that off to somebody or something else. I think that's significant. That said, I don't know if that's, unique or special to me. I think it might be unique or special to people who are, trying to figure this out and trying to, advance their company and their company's mission. Because like I said, I think there are a lot of people out there doing that.
Yeah.
So and to follow up on that, it's interesting on the tech side of it. We've seen, a lot of tools coming into play. Do you think the community is getting it right in terms of what they're providing revenue managers, and are they on the right path? Are they giving you the tools that you need to continue to be better at what you do, to continue to either make your job easier or make you more effective in this space? Are they on the right path, or are there things that you would like to see? Are there things you would like to see kind of develop or see more in this space?
I think they're getting a lot more right. They're getting a lot more right. The tools are getting a lot more sophisticated. The tools are, they're becoming smarter. And I think with any tool, whether it's revenue management or whatever, if you're going to adopt these tools, you're going to have to be willing to work the tool. Mm-hmm. And so I think that these tools that are out there now, these dynamic pricing softwares that are out there now, they're very, very good if you work the tool, if you manage the tool well. I can't say for sure, if that's actually the case, but I have seen how they've developed over time. And I've appreciated, like I've had relationships with these companies for years, and I will talk to them about things, and I'm not going to be able to say anything specific right now because I can't think of anything, but I've talked to them in specific terms about, hey, it would be really nice to see X or Y, and they will come back. They're very receptive to that. They want to create tools that we can use that work for us, and so they're always very open to ideas and critique. And so I think they are continuing to get better. I think some of the companies that, are out there that, like you were mentioning, maybe they're just not ready for revenue management, or that they don't think they're ready for revenue management. But one thing I would say is that I think revenue management, you can take things in small bites. You don't have to just have a revenue manager on staff. You don't have to have a revenue management department to be doing things that are considered part of revenue management or revenue strategy. So, some of these tools may be great for people who are like, hey, I'm a 1 or 2 person show. I just need to have something. And maybe they set it and forget it, which of course is not ideal, but
No.
Is that better than nothing? I don't know. Cause I don't know that.
Right.
But I think it's important for folks to acknowledge that being open to revenue management strategies will likely get the ball rolling and help them in the long run. That's not to say that, I think you should do X, Y, or Z because I don't know your company, but I do think if you're thinking along those, data is important and we can use this to help our company grow and develop. That's the first step that you take. Even if it's just the way that you're thinking about things. So I think these tools it's a long way of saying, I think these tools have gotten much better. I think there's huge value in these tools if you're willing to put the time and energy into using them and managing them.
Great answer. Hey, I got a question for you. So the U.S. is opening up to international travel to the fully vaccinated. And I think it's like November 7th. That date could be wrong, but it's early November. Is there anything that you are seeing or you are anticipating for natural retreats or in the U.S. in general? Like, what do you see the impact on travel here in the vacation rental space?
That's the first answer is I don't know. The second thing that I will throw out there is that I think the narrative is true in that, we've all been talking about how there's been this fundamental shift in the way that people travel. For Americans, because, a lot of other countries have been closed. And for the international traveler coming to America. So I would imagine that shift in travel didn't just affect Americans. Right. It's affected other countries as well. So I do think that the uplift in the US with, travelers staying closer to home or drive markets or things, I do think that, while people will start traveling more, I think internationally, I do think that's something that people have learned and have grown to love. I also think that same thing may apply in other countries. They've been having to do the same thing. Of course, some countries have been completely locked down and they haven't been able to even travel within their own country. But so I think there's a part of that that is permanent everywhere. It's one of those things that I'm just not sure. Like I can see it. I could see us seeing fewer international travelers here and seeing fewer people traveling internationally because they've discovered, something more locally. I could see it completely boom. You know, I mean, right now, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say I've seen anything significant right now yet. I think people are probably still like, is it really going to happen? Because, you know, I mean, the way that things have been going, it's like, okay, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. No, it's not.
Nope.
You know, and yes. No, it's not. And so I think people are probably waiting for it to actually happen. And then when things actually happen, like things have closed down again. So it's like, I wonder if people are a little bit jaded about that. Like, well, I don't really know if I can bank on this actually being open whenever. Hopefully, we all hope, of course, everything is. But I think there's also been a little bit of like this psychological trauma thing going on with travelers. Like, you don't want to like get your hopes up about too many things. So I think a lot of that stuff, and I know that international travelers, you know, you've generally that booking window is going to be a little bit wider because you don't just plan a trip to London next week. So you are probably going to see that happening, but I don't necessarily know that we're going to start seeing that happening until a date has been, we have arrived at a date, something has happened, things are open, and then people start to feel a little bit more confident. I don't think it's like, hey, it's going to happen in November or whatever, it's going to happen then, so I'm going to start booking my travel. We're probably not going to see as much of that. There may be people who are doing that. I have not seen it personally, but I do think that's going to be, it's going to be that kind of tentative, okay, it's opening, so maybe I'll start looking here and I'll start, but it's not going to be fast. I think we've all kind of been jaded by that a bit.
Right. We're tired.
It's gonna be interesting to see. It's gonna be interesting to see. There's a lot of other things we're not considering too. Like, what is the economy gonna be like? What is the cost of travel gonna be like? Gas is off the chain right now, right? Like, what effect is that gonna have on local and regional travel and airlines? Like, what are
rental cars? You know, I mean, that's like, once you get here, what are you going to drive?
Right.
Well, I mean, you saw what happened in Hawaii, and I don't even know if you guys were able to see like Landau's V-Trips video or the movie.
Oh.
When they were in a U-Haul. Remember when you heard about like people renting U-Hauls? They were legit in a U-Haul. And one scene, he was like in between the lava banks, like trying to turn the U-Haul around. Insane.
It's not. You're right. I mean, it's like that supply chain thing, you know, that kind of analogy. But it applies everywhere. You know, who knows? They can maybe get here, but then what? You know, we might have a great vacation rental for them, but how do you get there? You know,
but again, like, and what is that going to affect? The supply chain issue is going to actually affect our business too, right?
Yep.
Our ability to get the goods and things that stock our properties, and like, we're not having that. Well, see, this is that brain, and I think these are the things that you have to be able to think about when you want to truly look at what the impact is, you know, is going to be when things open back up. Opening back up is awesome. What's the environment going to be when those?
Yeah, I mean, you can't get people to staff restaurants right now to like, you know, in these destinations. So it's like, so they're all coming, but is that going to be open? Like, is it going to be open for 7 days a week, or is it? Some of them have, you know, gone down to like, you know, abbreviated hours, or, you know, I don't know. It's all interconnected. So it is really tough. And I think that goes back to the whole hesitancy of people like, well, am I going to have the experience that I really want to have if I book my stuff right now? Okay, we're going to open up, but what does that actually mean? You know, I think a lot of it's just going to be very tentative, like, well, I'll see what they do. And, you know, and so I don't know. I would like to think that it's just going to open and everything's going to be great. But, you know, if it did right now, would everything be great? Would people have a great experience in market? If they get to some of these markets that are really affected by supply chain or by, you know, the employment, you know, outlook of some of these, you know, hospitality driven businesses. I don't know.
It's so interesting. This whole supply chain thing is absolutely baffling to me. And just to kind of, you know, and to see the impact it's had on all sorts of industry to date, from the small mom and pops here that rely on like supplies, you know, small supplies, packaging supplies. So like, you know, I was talking with my wife over the weekend. We were talking about, it's, you know, someone was saying, oh, just shop local, shop, and you won't have to deal with that. Well, actually, no, these companies that are local companies still rely, even if it's made locally and it's manufactured locally, they still they rely on supplies that are coming from overseas to go ahead and make these local things. You can't do everything locally. So it's really kind of interesting to see like the overall impact that this is having on society in general today. And what does this trajectory look like? Like when do we get back to, like, the hardest part for me is like, when do we we're getting back to are we getting back to some sort of normalcy for one thing, but everything else is so far from normalcy, and that it just seems like it's this crazy snowball effect it's really hard to predict what it's going to look like in 6 months, in a year, and it's difficult.
Yeah, I think it's a really good example of how just everything is interconnected. And you can talk about supply chain, or you can talk about employment or whatever, but I think about, I wrote something, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago about the whole technology thing. We were talking about technology, I think, offline, or maybe it was on here, I don't know, but and the improvements that technology has brought to our lives. So whether dynamic pricing, software, or whatever you want to talk about, but the concept, what I was writing about was like this concept of loss, that when you introduce certain things, there are certain things that are lost, and it doesn't have to be a negative loss, but it is an actual loss of something. And when you do one thing, it affects something else, which affects something else. And I think to be really, I guess, in tune to what you want to do or what you're doing, I think it's valuable to look forward those 5-6 steps. Like, okay, if I bring this in if I want to bring in dynamic pricing software to my company, and we're going to shift the way that we look at things or the way that we do things, what is lost there? It's not necessarily a negative thing. It may not be a productivity thing. It may not be this, but what actually goes away? And then how does that affect, 5 or 6 steps down the road? So anything like this, the supply chain, there's an issue. I'm a crocheter,
Yeah.
and I need to get my yarn, or I need to get a needle, or where does that come from? And how is that going to affect what I want to do in 2 months if I want to do it?
Right.
That's all really important. There's a loss there. There's probably a lot of things that you gain, but there's always a loss when you change something. So I just think that's something that, I try to think about, whether it's in my career or whether it's in my personal life, but I think that's significant, and I don't always think about it the way I should, but I think it's significant enough that, I try to get myself thinking like that.
I think that's an awesome way to think of it too. And especially, equating that the loss is not always a negative, but understanding that loss is there, because technology is supposed to replace things, right? Or either a process or something within that line. And whether it's good or bad, I think we also plugging us in determines whether that happens or not, or what that is, right? Like the way email was supposed to free us up from work and actually bonded us to work even more.
Yeah, and now you're emailing on vacation, and you're emailing from your phone, and you're emailing, like, it never stops.
Right.
I know.
And to go back to that, so the movie, we were talking about this earlier, technology getting away, hiding, going back to easier. The movie was called The Village, just FYI. So
The Village.
But I think it's interesting because now, and it brings up a good point, because business owners, and us all are going to have to make decisions moving forward. And I think even coming out of this pandemic and having time to sit and focus on a lot of things, the reason people aren't going back to their jobs, the reason people aren't, there's a lot of change happening, is people have had really time to sit, be quiet, figure things out, and are making different decisions, right?
Yep.
And how this is going to play at both the macro and micro level in our industry and the economy abroad is kind of an unknown right now. Because on the other side of that, we see a lot of things happening, but we really don't know what the effect of those things are going to be at any aspect of our life. And so it's kind of exciting, kind of frightening, but it's going to be interesting. I'll put it like that over the next.
There's a lot of unknown.
Yeah, well, it should make your job and all of our jobs a bit more interesting coming up. some challenges, maybe but challenges are fun, right?
That's right.
Hey, you did say this earlier. You wouldn't change it. This is so much more rewarding and challenging than on the vacation rental, short-term rental side than it was on the hotel side of things. So we're just adding some more monkey wrenches thrown in there for you.
There you go. That's right.
Hey, Sarah, it's been so much fun having you on today. Thank you so much for joining us.
That was my pleasure. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything that you just kind of left us with some great nuggets, but do you have any other nuggets that you'd like to leave the audience with today?
Oh, geez. Yeah. Probably not. I hadn't thought that time to think about that, but I do appreciate the time to chat. I love this kind of thing, talking with people in the industry and just throwing ideas around, I think is really valuable for everybody, regardless of your discipline. A lot of this is not revenue management. It's just, hey, how do we exist in this space and other spaces too? Our world is changing, and we're, to Mateo's earlier comment, people are thinking about things differently, and we're going to all have to shift because everything's shifted. It's not just the way people think about travel. It's the way they think about where they work and how they work and when they work. And so these are all really important things. So I appreciate the opportunity to throw it around with you.
Well, again, you're going to have to come back and see us again. We'll have to definitely continue the conversation.
I would love to.
A year later, where are we at? But no, it's been awesome having you. Thanks for coming and putting up with
my pleasure.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for putting up with my my flu brain at the beginning there. I mean, I was out of it.
It's all good. It got better throughout the
That's
thing.
Good. I'm glad.
I totally didn't even know.
We need to keep record, John. We got to come up with a blooper reel.
Until next time. Thanks, Sarah.
Absolutely. Thanks.